The sky above the garden at Capsule Corporation did not just turn dark, it cracked open like a broken mirror. Purple lightning struck the green grass and burned the dirt instantly. The air screamed with a sound that hurt the ears of everyone standing there. Goku jumped back and held his hands up ready to fight. Vegeta stood next to him with sweat on his forehead because he felt a power he did not understand. It was not ki, and it was not magic. It was something else entirely. Lord Beerus dropped his food and looked at the tear in the sky with wide eyes. He felt a chill go down his spine for the first time in centuries. The Tournament of Power was only a few hours away, and everything was going wrong. The team was incomplete. Majin Buu was asleep and would not wake up no matter what they did. Master Roshi was lying on a medical bed nearby. His body was too hurt from a secret training session that went bad. Universe 7 was down to 9 fighters, and the existence of their entire world was on the line. Whis had tried a dangerous and old spell to pull a warrior from a distant timeline to fill the empty spot, but the spell went wild. The hole in the air grew wider and sucked in the wind like a vacuum. Trees bent sideways and frantic birds flew away in fear. A sound like a giant bell rang deep in everyone's chests. Then the purple light exploded. A small round blue shadow fell from the center of the lightning. It hit the ground with a wet bounce. The dust cleared slowly. It was not a giant monster or a strong alien warrior. It was a small blue slime. Goku blinked and lowered his hands. He looked very confused. Vegeta looked angry. He thought this was a bad joke or a mistake, but Beerus did not laugh. He sensed the truth inside the blue jelly. He felt a deep ocean of energy called Magicules that had no bottom. The slime shifted and changed shape in a blink. It grew tall and turned into a person with long blue-silver hair and golden eyes. The person looked around at the destroyed garden and the shocked faces. This was Rimuru Tempest. He was not in his city of monsters anymore. His golden eyes scanned Goku and Vegeta. Inside his head, a smart voice called Raphael spoke very fast. It told him the air here was different and the gravity was heavy. It told him these people were strong enough to break planets with their fists. Rimuru felt the threat immediately. He did not smile. He let out a wave of his own power to protect himself. The ground cracked under his feet from the pressure. The air turned heavy and hard to breathe. Goku felt his own blood run hot. This stranger was not weak. This stranger was a king of a different world. The huge energy from Rimuru clashed with the energy of the Dragon Ball universe. It created sparks in the air. Whis looked at his staff and saw that the timeline was twisting. The clock for the tournament was ticking down, and the 10th member of the team had just arrived by accident. Fate had changed. The story of the tournament was not going to happen the way the angels planned. A variable that did not belong in this history had just landed, and the balance of the multiverse began to tip over. The simple quest for survival had just become something much more complicated and dangerous. The red light flared in Homelander's eyes, a precursor to the lethal beams that had bisected planes and severed steel like butter. Izuku Midoriya did not need to know this man's name or his history to understand the intent. The intent was death. Danger sense screamed so loudly in Izuku's skull that it momentarily drowned out the sirens wailing from the street below. He did not think. He reacted. One for All flooded his legs at 45%, the green lightning tearing through the fabric of his trousers. He pushed off the ledge with enough force to crack the concrete foundation of the floor they stood on. 2 beams of concentrated heat slashed through the space where Izuku's head had been a microsecond before. The lasers struck the glass facade of the adjacent office, blowing out the windows in a shower of molten shards. Izuku was in the air, spinning, his mind racing to analyze the threat. This was a villain. It had to be. A villain wearing a cape, hovering in the sky, attacking a civilian without provocation. Izuku extended his left hand, black tendrils of energy shooting out from his fingertips. Black Whip latched onto a flagpole jutting from the 30th story of the tower. He hauled himself around the corner of the building, swinging hard to break the line of sight. Homelander watched the boy vanish around the bend. He blinked, the red glow fading, replaced by a look of genuine confusion that quickly curdled into rage. He had missed. He never missed. And the boy had flown. Not like he flew with simple anti-gravity propulsion, but by swinging on weird black ropes that came out of his skin. It was disgusting. It was messy. Homelander launched himself forward, the sonic boom of his acceleration shattering the remaining windows on the floor. He rounded the corner instantly, scanning the air. Izuku was clinging to the side of the building, panting. He felt heavier here. Gravity felt more oppressive. Or perhaps the dimensional transit had sapped his stamina. He saw the blue streak tear around the corner and realized he could not outrun this man. The man was faster than a fighter jet. Izuku needed cover. He engaged the third user's quirk. F.A. Jin built up kinetic energy in his legs as he crouched against the glass. When Homelander spotted him and dove, eyes lighting up again, Izuku released the energy. He didn't jump away. He jumped through. He smashed through the reinforced glass of the 45th floor, tucking into a roll as he hit the carpet of an empty law office. Homelander stopped outside the broken window, hovering. He could hear the boy inside. He could hear the heart rate, erratic and fast. He floated forward, drifting into the room, his boots crunching on the glass. He looked around the empty cubicles. "Come out," he said, his voice calm but laced with the frequency that vibrated in Izuku's chest. "You are trespassing on Vought property. You are a super terrorist. There is nowhere to go. I can hear your blood pumping." Izuku was hiding behind a heavy oak desk, clutching his side. The term super terrorist confused him. He was a hero student. He tried to formulate a plan. He could not fight full power in a building. The structure would collapse. There were people downstairs. He had to de-escalate. He stood up slowly, raising his hands. The green lightning faded. He looked at the man in the cape. "I am not a terrorist," Izuku said, his voice trembling slightly, but his gaze firm. "My name is Deku. I am a hero. I don't know how I got here. I don't want to fight you." Homelander looked at the boy. The costume was tattered. The kid looked like a mess. Green hair, big eyes. He looked pathetic. "A hero," Homelander repeated, savoring the word like a bad joke. He stepped closer, his cape settling around his shoulders. "I am the hero. I am the only hero that matters. You are just a chaotic variable, and I hate chaos." Homelander flicked his wrist, a backhand motion that looked casual. Zuko's danger sense flared, but the speed was deceptive. The blow connected with Izuku's forearm as he raised it to block. The impact was like being hit by a high-speed train. Izuku was launched backward, smashing through the drywall, through the break room, and slamming into the elevator shaft doors at the core of the building. The metal doors buckled around him. Izuku coughed, tasting iron. His forearm was bruised, the bone vibrating from the stress. This man's physical strength rivaled all mights. It was raw, unrefined, but overwhelming. Izuku realized that talking was death. This man had no code. He was a narcissist with the power of a god. Izuku needed to vanish. He pried the elevator doors open and looked down the dark shaft. He could hear the hum of the car rising. He looked up to see Homelander tearing through the walls, walking in a straight line toward him. lazily destroying the infrastructure of the building. Izuku activated the sixth user's quirk, Smokescreen. Thick, purple smoke exploded from Izuku's body, filling the hallway and the elevator shaft instantly. It was dense and choked the air. Homelander stopped, waving his hand in front of his face. He coughed. He tried to use his X-ray vision, but the smoke was particulate matter dense enough to scatter the light and obscure the visual. He fired his lasers blindly into the smoke, sweeping the room. The beams sliced through walls and ceilings, igniting fires, but he heard nothing. The heartbeat was gone. Izuku was falling down the elevator shaft, using Black Whip to slow his descent, keeping silent. He reached the ground floor, forced the doors open, and sprinted into the lobby. Panic had already set in. People were screaming, running for the exits. Debris was falling outside. Izuku blended into the crowd, keeping his head down, the tattered hood of his costume pulled up. He burst out onto the street, the noise of New York City assaulting his senses. It was louder, angrier, and dirtier than the cities he knew. He didn't stop. He ran until his lungs burned, weaving through alleys, putting miles between him and the tower. High above, in the ruined conference room of Vought Tower, Ashley Barrett was screaming into a phone. The Seven were in chaos. The Deep was trying to hide under the table. Queen Maeve was pouring herself a drink, her hand shaking slightly. Homelander flew back in through the broken window, landing heavily. The room went silent. He looked at them. His uniform was spotless, save for a calm layer of dust. "It's handled," Homelander lied. His voice was tight. He walked to the head of the table. It was a space debris impact. A satellite. I caught most of it, but some pieces got through. That's the story. Ashley lowered the phone, her eyes wide. But Homelander, people saw a person. There's footage from the street. Someone falling. Green lightning. Twitter is trending #AlienBoy. We can't just say it was a satellite. Homelander turned to her. His eyes did not glow, but the threat was there, heavy in the room. Then it was a super terrorist, he corrected, his voice dropping an octave. A new villain from the east. He attacked the tower. I repelled him. He is wounded and on the run. He is dangerous. If anyone sees him, they are not to engage. They call Vought. They call me. He looked out the window at the city. He was vibrating with unreleased aggression. He had let someone get away, a child who took a punch that would have liquefied a normal soup. He needed to find this Deku, and he needed to rip him apart to see what made him tick. 3 hours later, Izuku sat huddled in the corner of a damp alleyway in Queens. It was raining now, a cold grey drizzle that soaked through his ruined costume. He had found a discarded tarp and wrapped it around his shoulders. He was shivering, not just from the cold, but from the shock. He had checked his pockets. He had his phone, but it had no signal. The network didn't exist here. He had no money. His hero license was a piece of plastic that meant nothing. He watched the people walking by the mouth of the alley. They looked tired. They looked angry. In his world, even with the villain threat, there was a sense of societal cohesion. Heroes were public servants. Here, the billboards told a different story. He saw an electronic ad on a bus stop. It showed the man who had attacked him, Homelander, holding a bottle of perfume. The slogan read, "Scent of a Savior. Buy now." Izuku frowned. Heroes didn't sell perfume. They didn't have corporate sponsorships. He remembered Uraraka's family struggles, the financial aspect of hero work. But this was different. This was industry. This was a monopoly on safety. He shifted, wincing as his bruised ribs protested. He needed information. He needed to know the rules of this reality. A scream echoed from deeper in the alley. It was a sound Izuku knew well. Fear. He stood up, ignoring the pain. Hero or not, stranger or not, he could not ignore a cry for help. He moved silently, the soles of his iron boots making no sound on the wet pavement. Around the bend, 3 men were cornering a woman against a dumpster. One of them had a knife. It was a standard mugging. In a world of flying men and laser eyes, the petty crime remained the same. Izuku didn't announce himself. He didn't have the energy for a speech. He moved with the speed of a bullet. He appeared between the knifeman and the woman. He grabbed the attacker's wrist, applying just enough pressure to force the fingers open. The knife clattered to the ground. The man shouted in surprise, swinging a wild punch. Izuku ducked under it and swept the man's legs, sending him crashing into the puddles. The other 2 men hesitated, seeing the green sparks dancing around this strange, ragged boy. "Get out of here," Izuku said, his voice low. The thugs didn't need to be told twice. They scrambled over the fence and ran. Izuku turned to the woman, offering a hand. "Are you okay?" he asked, trying to smile, trying to be the symbol of peace All Might taught him to be. The woman didn't take his hand. She pressed herself back against the dumpster, her eyes wide with terror. She looked at his glowing skin, the black tendrils retracting into his arms. "Please," she whispered, "I don't have any money. Don't hurt me. I won't tell anyone I saw a soup. I promise. Just let me go." Izuku froze. She wasn't afraid of the muggers anymore. She was afraid of him, because he had power. In this world, power didn't mean safety for the weak. It meant danger. It meant collateral damage. He lowered his hand. "Go," he said softly. The woman bolted, running out of the alley without looking back. Izuku stood alone in the rain. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. He had saved her, but he hadn't saved her from the fear. The system here was broken. The trust between the powerful and the powerless didn't exist. He sat back down on a crate, feeling a profound loneliness wash over him. He was truly alone. Across the city, in a basement beneath a pawn shop in the Flatiron district, the air smelled of stale beer and gunpowder. William Billy Butcher sat in front of a bank of monitors, his boots up on the desk. He was watching the leaked cell phone footage from the street outside Vought Tower. It was shaky, vertical video, but it showed what he needed to see. A figure falling, green lightning, the impact that cracked the street, and then the brief glimpse of the face before the figure vanished into the crowd. It was a kid who looked terrified. Mother's Milk stood behind him, crossing his huge arms. "That ain't one of ours," M said, his voice deep and thoughtful. "Vaught's already spinning it. They're calling him a foreign terrorist. But look at the body language, Butcher. The kid was running. He was retreating." Butcher took a drag from a cigarette, the ember glowing in the dim light. He leaned forward, pausing the video on the frame where Homelander hovered above the street. He zoomed in on Homelander's face. The resolution was grainy, but Butcher knew that face better than his own. He knew every tick, every micro-expression of the narcissist. "Look at his eyes, Butcher rumbled, his accent thick. "That ain't the look of a man who just won a fight. That's the look of a man who's been embarrassed. That's the look of a man who hit something he couldn't break." Frenchie slid into the room, holding a tablet. "I have analyzed the energy signature from the tower sensors," he said, his frantic energy filling the space. "It is bizarre, Butcher. It is not Compound 5. The radioactive decay is missing. The biological markers are completely different. This energy, it is bioelectric, but it acts like a stockpile resource. It is ancient." Butcher smirked, a cruel, sharp expression. So we've got a soup that ain't a soup. A kid who went toe-to-toe with the Homelander and walked away. And Vought is terrified of him. He stood up, grabbing his trench coat from the back of the chair. We're going to find this lad, Butcher said. Before Vought does, MM asked. Before Vought puts a bullet in his brain, Butcher corrected. If this kid can hurt Homelander, then he's the weapon we've been waiting for. Or he's the biggest bloody bomb to hit this city since the 70s. Either way, he belongs to us now. Back in the alley, Izuku tried to activate the Vestige world to talk to the previous users, to ask Nana Shimura or All Might for guidance. But the connection was silent. It was as if the frequency was jammed. The air in this dimension was too thick with cynicism. Or perhaps the physics simply didn't allow for the spiritual connection to manifest clearly. He was cut off from the wisdom of the past. He had to rely on his own intellect. He needed a base. He needed food. He needed to hide. He remembered the layout of the city was similar to his own world's pre-Quirk history books. If this was New York, there were subways. There were abandoned tunnels. He stood up, wrapping the tarp tighter. He would go underground. As he moved to the manhole cover near the alley entrance, his danger sense pricked again. Not the screaming alarm of a direct attack, but the low, buzzing hum of surveillance. He looked up. A pigeon was sitting on the fire escape. It looked normal, but the way it tracked him was mechanical. Izuku narrowed his eyes. He didn't know about Vaught's surveillance capabilities, but he knew what it felt like to be hunted. He lifted the manhole cover with one hand, the heavy iron feeling like cardboard. He slipped into the darkness of the sewer system, pulling the lid shut above him. Minutes later, a black van pulled up to the mouth of the alley. The back doors opened and Black Noir stepped out. He stood completely still, the rain sliding off his armor. He looked at the dumpster where the mugging had happened. He looked at the crate where Izuku had sat. He tilted his head, listening. He could hear the faint scuff of boots on concrete deep below the street. Noir tapped his earpiece, sending a signal back to the tower. He had the scent. He didn't run. He didn't rush. He walked to the manhole cover and lifted it silently. He dropped into the dark, a silent shadow pursuing a spark of lightning. Izuku moved through the tunnels, the smell of sewage stinging his nose. He used the ambient light from street grates to navigate. He was hungry. His metabolic rate was high because of One for All. He needed thousands of calories to function, and he was running on empty. He felt a wave of dizziness and leaned against the wet brick wall. Focus, he whispered to himself. You faced Shigaraki. You faced All for One. You can survive this. He heard a splash behind him. It was soft, almost imperceptible. Izuku spun around, raising his fists. The tunnel was dark, stretching back into the gloom. Who's there? He called out. Silence answered him, but his danger sense was buzzing at the base of his skull. It was a cold sensation. Something was here. Something that didn't think, didn't feel, just acted. Black Noir dropped from the ceiling of the tunnel, landing in a crouch 10 feet away. He held 2 curved knives. He said nothing. The visual of the dark hero was terrifying. A void in the shape of a man. Izuku analyzed the opponent instantly. No monologue, no posturing, efficient movement. This was an assassin. Vought sent you? Izuku asked. Noir lunged. He was fast, faster than the thugs, faster than most pros back home. He closed the distance in a blink, the knives slashing toward Izuku's throat. Izuku activated full cowl at 5%, dodging backward. The knife tip grazed his chin, drawing a thin line of blood. Izuku countered with a low kick, aiming to sweep Noir's legs. Noir anticipated it, leaping over the leg and driving a knee toward Izuku's face. Izuku blocked with his forearms, the impact driving his boots into the sludge of the tunnel floor. This guy was strong, superhumanly strong. Izuku used the impact to backflip away, creating distance. Black Whip shot out, grabbing a pipe overhead. Izuku pulled himself up, hanging from the ceiling. Noir stopped, looking up. He didn't throw the knives. He reached into his belt and pulled out small spherical grenades. He tossed them casually. Izuku's eyes widened. Explosives in a confined space. This guy was crazy. Izuku released the whip and dropped, kicking the grenades away mid-air before they detonated. The explosion rocked the tunnel, sending a shockwave of water and filth in both directions. The noise was deafening. Smoke filled the tunnel. Izuku coughed, his ears ringing. He couldn't see Noir. Danger sense spiked to the left. Izuku twisted, barely catching Noir's wrist as the assassin tried to stab him in the kidney. They grappled in the dark water. Noir's strength was immense, silent and unyielding. Izuku gritted his teeth, channeling 20% into his arm. He threw Noir off him, slamming the assassin into the brick wall. The wall cracked. Noir slumped for a second, then stood up as if nothing happened. He cracked his neck. Izuku panted. This wasn't a fight he could win by attrition. He was tired, hungry, and bleeding. He needed to escape. He looked down the tunnel. The explosion had likely weakened the structure. "I'm sorry," Izuku muttered. He reached back and flicked his fingers, unleashing a Delaware Smash Air Force blast at the ceiling above Noir. The bricks gave way, and tons of earth and street debris collapsed into the tunnel, creating a barrier between them. Izuku didn't wait to see if Noir was buried. He turned and ran deeper into the dark, clutching his side. He had escaped the immediate threat, but he knew the truth now. Vought had eyes everywhere, and they had monsters that didn't stop. He emerged from a drainage pipe miles away, near the docks. The rain had stopped. The night air was cold. He saw a van parked near the water. The side door slid open. A man with a beard and a trench coat stood there. He held a lit sun, the man said, before the silent bloke digs himself out. Izuku froze, ready to fight. "Who are you?" "The name's Butcher," the man said, stepping aside to reveal the interior of the van. "And I reckon we both hate the man in the blue suit." Izuku looked at Butcher. He looked at the van. His danger sense was quiet. It wasn't registering a threat from this man. Caution, yes, but not immediate danger. Izuku was exhausted. He had no other options. He stepped toward the van. "I'm looking for a way home," Izuku said. Butcher grinned, a wolfish baring of teeth. "Well," Butcher said, "I can't promise you home, kid. But I can promise you a chance to hurt the bastards who are keeping you here." Izuku climbed into the van. The door slid shut, sealing out the city lights. The engine roared to life, and the van sped away into the night, carrying the lost hero into the heart of a war he did not yet understand. The silver fire surrounding Son Goku did not burn cleanly like the heat of a star, but rather consumed him like a fever. The arena floor beneath his feet hissed as droplets of the black and blue corruption dripped from his aura. He was a paradox of supreme reflex and chaotic self-destruction. Jiren stood his ground, his eyes narrowing not in fear, but in judgment. The Pride Trooper saw the violation of martial purity. Goku vanished. The sound of his movement came seconds after the impact. A fist buried itself in Jiren's midsection. The impact cratered the floating debris they stood on. Jiren slid back 10 feet, his heels carving trenches into the Kachin steel. For the first time in the tournament, the absolute warrior had been forced to cede ground. The Universe 7 bench erupted in cheers, but Rimuru Tempest did not cheer. His golden eyes were wide with a different kind of vision. Raphael was screaming warnings directly into his soul. The analysis was terrifying. Goku was not controlling the power. The power was eating his nervous system. The Magicules Rimuru had inadvertently introduced were acting like a neurotoxin to the Saiyan biology. They were forcing the body to exceed its limits by dissolving the safety limiters in the brain. It was not a transformation. It was a suicide burn. Goku roared a sound that was half human and half beast. He launched himself again. This time Jiren was ready. The grey alien caught Goku's fist. The shockwave shattered the nearby pillars. Jiren's red aura flared violently, pushing back against the silver and black sludge. They locked eyes. Goku's silver pupils were trembling. A vein burst in Goku's arm, spraying blood that sizzled into steam instantly. Jiren spoke one word: disappointing. He twisted his body and delivered a punch to Goku's solar plexus that carried the weight of justice. The mutated Ultra Instinct shattered. The silver light winked out instantly. The black corruption recoiled, snapping back into Goku's body. His eyes rolled back into his head. He did not fall. He crumpled. The sudden cessation of energy was more violent than the impact. Goku dropped to the stone like a puppet with cut strings. His skin was grey and his breathing was shallow. He was not just unconscious. He was dying. Jiren raised a hand to finish the job, to knock the Saiyan out of the ring and end the anomaly. A beam of purple light struck the ground between them. Frieza stood on a high pillar, his finger smoking. He smiled, a cold and calculating smile. He remarked that the show was just getting interesting, and it would be rude to end it so quickly. Jiren looked at Frieza, then at the unconscious Goku. He decided they were no longer a threat. He turned his back. He walked away, returning to his meditation spot amidst the ruins. Toppo and Dispo stepped forward to guard him. The message was clear. The king was done playing. The rest of the insects could fight among themselves. Rimuru rushed to Goku's side. He turned his body into a fluid state to slide faster over the broken terrain. Vegeta arrived at the same time, his face twisted in a snarl. He looked at Rimuru with pure venom. He demanded to know what the slime had done to Kakarot. Rimuru did not answer. He placed a hand on Goku's chest. He tried to feed a healing potion into Goku's mouth, but the liquid fizzled and evaporated on contact. The corruption was rejecting foreign aid. Raphael provided a grim prognosis. The spirit energy pathways were clogged with magical residue. Goku was in a state of spiritual shock. He would not wake up for hours, maybe never. Universe 7 had lost its ace. The shift in the atmosphere of the world of Void was immediate. The other universes had been watching in terror as the giant Anaraza fell and the two titans clashed. Now they saw the truth. The titan was fallen. The predator was wounded. The fear evaporated and was replaced by opportunism. The Grand Minister's voice floated down from the heavens, announcing that 48 minutes remained. The time was ticking. Survival was the only metric. From the shadows of the debris field, the wolves began to circle. It started with Universe 4. The rat god Quitella chittered a command. The hidden warriors emerged. Mona from Universe 4 rolled towards them, expanding her body into a giant crushing ball. Behind her, the sniper prum locked onto the motionless Goku. Vegeta stepped in front of Goku. He powered up to Super Saiyan Blue, but his aura was flickering. He was exhausted from the fight with Aniraza. Gohan and Piccolo landed on the left flank. Android 17 and 18 took the right. Frieza hovered above, watching but not committing. They formed a defensive perimeter around the fallen Saiyan. Rimuru stood in the center, acting as the last line of defense. He felt the weight of leadership settling on his shoulders. This was a siege, and they were running out of resources. The attack commenced without a signal. Mona crashed into Vegeta. The Prince of Science caught the giant ball, but the momentum dragged him backward. He grunted, digging his boots in. At the same time, laser blasts from Prum rained down on the center. Rimuru spun, creating a reflecting mirror barrier. The lasers bounced off, scorching the ground around them. But this was just a distraction. From the ground beneath them, shadows elongated. The warrior Gamisara's invisible and scentless struck. He swept Gohan's legs. Gohan fell. A heavy blow struck his face from nowhere. Piccolo sensed the displacement of air. He fired a shockwave blindly. It connected with something solid, but the invisible enemy rolled away. Confusion spread. They were fighting an enemy they could not see, while protecting a burden they could not move. Rimuru analyzed the situation. He needed to clear the board. He needed a wide area attack. He thought of Megiddo, the rain of light that had massacred the Falmouth army. Raphael ran the calculation. Conclusion: denied. The technique was too lethal. If he used it, he would kill the weaker opponents instantly. Killing meant disqualification. Disqualification meant erasure. He was handcuffed by the rules. He needed a non-lethal crowd control. He opted for sticky thread. He sprayed a massive web of steel-strong silk over the area, hoping to catch the invisible fighter. The thread stuck to the debris, creating a trap zone. It worked. A section of the web vibrated where nothing was visible. Piccolo saw it. He extended his arm, stretching it like rubber, and grabbed the empty air. His hand closed around her throat. Gamisara's gagged and became visible. Piccolo hurled him off the stage with a shout. One down. But the relief was short-lived. The chaos attracted the heavy hitters. From the far side of the arena, a green light exploded. The Saiyan girls from Universe 6, Caulifla, and Carl were approaching. They had fused. Kefla was born earlier than in the original timeline drawn by the massive energy spike of the mutated Ultra Instinct. She landed on a high peak looking down at the beleaguered Team Universe 7. She laughed, a sound that vibrated in their bones. She wanted to fight the Silver Goku. When she saw him unconscious, she spat in disappointment. She decided to beat up the rest of them to wake him up. Kefla launched a volley of red and green energy blasts. It was a carpet bombing. The sheer volume of fire forced the team to scatter. The defensive formation broke. This was the moment the catastrophe began. Vegeta was locked in combat with Mona and couldn't disengage. 17 and 18 were pinned down by the Universe 2 fighters who had joined the fray. Ribrianna, the giant love warrior, was rolling towards 18. Gohan and Piccolo were left to deal with Kefla. It was a mismatch. Kefla moved faster than Gohan could track. She kicked him in the neck. Gohan crashed into a pile of rubble, dazed. Piccolo screamed Gohan's name and charged a special beam cannon. Kefla just smiled. She appeared in front of Piccolo and slapped the attack away. She grabbed Piccolo by the antenna. Rimuru saw it happening. He was the wild card. He had to intervene. He used Shadow Step to teleport behind Kefla. He aimed a kick at her head. Kefla sensed him. Her instincts were razor sharp. She dropped Piccolo and spun around, catching Romuru's leg. She grinned. She said a slime shouldn't play with science. She blasted Rimuru at point-blank range. Rimuru's body scattered into blobs of jelly. He survived thanks to pain nullification and physical attack resistance, but the force blew him halfway across the sector. He had to reform. It took seconds. Precious seconds. In those seconds, the line collapsed. Ribrian had pinned Android 18 against a cliff edge. 18 was out of energy. She had spent too much fighting the giant Aniraza. Ribrian charged a massive heart-shaped energy bomb. 18 looked for 17, but he was busy fighting 3 opponents at once. She looked at Krillin in the stands. She closed her eyes. Then a figure blurred in front of her. It was not 17. It was Rimuru who had barely reformed. He didn't have time to block. He used gluttony. A giant mouth of dark energy emerged from his slime body and swallowed the heart bomb. The energy was massive. It tasted like sugar and acid. Raphael warned that the energy was expanding inside his stomach. He couldn't digest it fast enough. He had to vent it. Rimuru aimed his hand away from the arena and fired the stored energy back out. The recoil saved 18, but it left Rimuru open. A shadow fell over him. It was the sniper Prum again, reflecting a beam off a teammate. The beam pierced Rimuru's shoulder. He flinched. That flinch was the error. From the blind spot, a small, unassuming fighter from Universe 4 named Shansa blew a strange flute. An illusion manifested. It looked like the storm dragon Veldora. Rimuru froze. For a split second, his soul reacted to the image of his best friend. It was a trick, a mental attack. In that moment of hesitation, another fighter shoved Rimuru. He didn't fall off the edge. He dug in. But the shove wasn't meant for him. It was meant to clear the path. Behind Rimuru, Android 18 was exposed. Without Rimuru's cover, and with her energy spent, she was vulnerable. Gamisaras, who had climbed back up the edge of the arena, using the confusion, tackled 18. They both tumbled over the side. 18 fired a blast to propel herself back up, but she was too drained. She looked at Rimuru with a look of apology, not anger. She fell into the void. "No!" Rimuru shouted, reaching out a hand. A sticky thread shot out. It missed her hand by an inch. Android 18 vanished. Universe 7 had lost its first member of the siege. But the cost was compounding. On the other side, Piccolo was fighting a losing battle against Kefla to protect Gohan. Gohan was trying to stand up, shaking his head to clear the cobwebs. Kefla was toying with them. She fired a massive ray blaster attack. It was a wide cone of destruction. It was aimed at Gohan. Piccolo saw the trajectory. He knew Gohan couldn't dodge in his condition. The Namekian did not hesitate. The ancient memory of shielding a child Gohan from Nappa played out again in the void. Piccolo stepped in front of the blast. He didn't block it. He absorbed it. The green light engulfed him. His clothes burned away. His skin scorched. He held his ground screaming until the blast faded. When the dust cleared, Piccolo was standing, but he was unconscious. He fell forward. Kefla laughed and kicked his body. Piccolo flew like a rag doll off the stage. Gohan screamed. The sound tore his throat. His aura flared back up white and fierce. Ultimate Gohan was back, triggered by the trauma. But it was too late. 2 members were gone in the span of a minute. The defensive circle was shattered. Goku was still lying in the dirt, defenseless. Vegeta finally threw Mona off the stage with a final burst of rage, blasting her into the stands. He rushed back to the center, panting heavily. He looked at the empty spots where 18 and Piccolo had been. He looked at Rimuru. "You hesitated." Vegeta spat the words. "You have all that power, and you froze because of a picture." Rimuru had no defense. He had let his emotions regarding Veldora create a gap. His naivety, his softness had cost them. This wasn't a game. This wasn't a diplomatic meeting in Tempest. This was war, and in war, hesitation was death. The catastrophe wasn't just the loss of teammates. It was the fracture of trust. The team was broken. Frieza landed nearby, clapping slowly, mocking their grief. He pointed out that they were now down to 7 fighters, and the strongest one was still sleeping. The sky above them darkened. The presence of the remaining universes pressed in. They had smelled blood, and they had taken a bite. Now they wanted the meal. Universe 3's robotic warriors whirred to life. Universe 2's magical girls began a group chant. Universe 6's Kefla cracked her knuckles staring at Gohan. The pressure was immense. Rimuru looked at his hands. He felt the weight of the mistake. He had treated this like a tournament. He needed to treat it like a conquest. Raphael spoke. Notice. Probability of victory has dropped to 14%. Recommendation. Abandon pacifist constraints. Authorization required. Rimuru closed his eyes. He remembered Shizu. He remembered the children. He wanted to be a good slime, but a good slime couldn't save this timeline. He opened his golden eyes. They were colder now. Authorization granted, he whispered. Raphael turned off the safety inhibitors. We are not playing anymore. The air around Rimuru changed. The blue aura turned into a dark swirling violet. The ground beneath him began to rot. He didn't look at Vegeta. He looked at the enemies gathering on the horizon. The hero was gone. The monster was waking up. And the price of that awakening would be heavy. The Tournament of Power had just become a horror story for the other universes. But for Universe 7, the nightmare was internal. They were trapped in a cage with something they didn't fully understand, and the lock was broken. Gohan stood up, wiping the blood from his mouth. He stood next to Rimuru. He didn't look at the slime with trust. He looked at him with desperation. Plan, Gohan asked, his voice raspy. Survive, Rimuru said. At any cost. The gong sounded in the distance. The halfway mark had passed. The stage was set for the escalation. The catastrophe had stripped away their safety net. Now they had to fly or fall, and gravity in the world of Void was unforgiving. The air in the world of Void did not simply get colder, it became sterile. The shift in Rimuru Tempest was not a visual explosion of power, like a Super Saiyan transformation, but a sudden absolute silence in the energetic spectrum. The violet aura that leaked from him was heavy, sinking into the Kachikachin floor and turning the toughest metal in the multiverse into a grey sludge. Raphael had taken the wheel. The great sage's evolved form did not feel hesitation or empathy. It saw only variables, and the probability of survival was unacceptably low. The solution was to remove the variables. Rimuru's body shifted, losing the human definition and becoming a semi-liquid humanoid shape of pure predatory intent. The remaining fighters of Universe 4, the hidden ones who had relied on trickery, felt a primal fear that bypassed their intellect and struck their instincts. Shunsha, the illusionist, tried to blow his flute again, to conjure another nightmare, but the sound did not travel. Rimuru had deployed a localized anti-magic area, dampening sound waves and energy transmission within a 100-meter radius. The flute remained silent. Shunsha looked up in panic. Rimuru did not move his feet. He extended a hand. A whip of black lightning, thin as a razor, snapped across the distance. It did not cut Shunsha. It wrapped around him. The lightning wasn't just electricity. It was a physical manifestation of gluttony. It drained Shunsha's stamina in a millisecond. The illusionist fainted instantly, his eyes rolling back. Rimuru flicked his wrist, and the small fighter was tossed over the edge like a discarded wrapper. The sniper Prum, who had been reflecting lasers from a distance, realized he was next. He tried to scramble away to find a new angle, but the ground beneath him betrayed him. The corruption Rimuru had released into the floor moved faster than Prum could run. The stone turned into a sticky bog. Prum sank to his knees. He screamed for help, but the sound was swallowed by the dampening field. Rimuru didn't even look at him. A pulse of wind pressure, a vacuum wave, struck Prum in the chest and launched him out of the ring. 2 enemies removed in 10 seconds. The efficiency was terrifying. Vegeta, watching from the perimeter of their defensive circle, felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He was a ruthless warrior, a former conqueror of planets, but this was different. This was not the prideful destruction of a Saiyan. This was the cold deletion of obstacles. It lacked honor. It lacked passion. It was industrial. But the arena was a chaotic ecosystem, and the vacuum left by Universe 4 was instantly filled by the aggression of Universe 2. The warriors of love, led by the remaining kamikaze fireballs, saw the darkness radiating from Rimuru and identified it as the ultimate evil to be purged. Zerline Zabuto and Rabbanra transformed, taking on the appearance and power of their fallen idols. They combined their energy into a massive heart-shaped singularity, a black hole of heavy love that distorted gravity. They launched it not at Rimuru, but at the defenseless Goku. It was a tactical choice. Strike the weak point to force the monster to defend. They expected Rimuru to shield Goku again to take the hit. They miscalculated. Rimuru did not move to intercept the attack. He calculated the trajectory. He calculated Goku's durability. He calculated the structural integrity of the floor. Raphael concluded that blocking would cost 30% of current magical reserves. Evading would cost 0%. Moving Goku was the optimal path, but moving him gently would be too slow. Rimuru stomped on the ground. A pillar of stone erupted beneath Goku's body, launching the comatose Saiyan into the air. The love black hole missed Goku by inches and slammed into the ground where he had been disintegrating a massive section of the arena. Goku landed hard on a higher plateau of debris, rolling like a rag doll. It was brutal. It was disrespectful. But he was safe. Vegeta roared in anger at the rough treatment of a fellow Saiyan. But Rimuru was already moving. He launched himself at the Universe 2 trio. They fired beams of pink light. Rimuru didn't dodge. He opened his chest, exposing the core of Beelzebub. The beams were swallowed. The energy of love was broken down, analyzed, and converted into pure fuel. Rimuru's aura flared. He was feeding. He crashed into Zerloin, carrying the momentum of a meteor. He didn't punch. He engulfed. His slime body expanded, wrapping around the heavy warrior. Zerloin screamed as his armor dissolved. Rimuru spun and spat Zerloin out, sending him crashing into his teammates. The three of them tumbled back, tangled in a web of sticky steel thread that Rimuru had woven into the spit. They slid off the edge, bound together by their own formation. Universe 2 was silenced. The silence did not last. A green flash illuminated the sky. Kefla had grown bored of waiting. She had watched the slimes display with a feral grin. She didn't care about tactics or evil. She wanted to break something that was hard to break. She ignored Gohan, who was still recovering his stamina, and dove straight for Rimuru. The impact shook the entire world of void. Kefla's fist met Rimuru's crossed arms. The force was enough to liquefy a normal fighter. Rimuru's arms shattered into droplets, but instantly reformed, hardening into diamond-scale armor. He was pushed back, skidding through the debris. Kefla didn't let up. She fired a point-blank blast of red energy. Gigantic burst. The heat was intense. Rimuru felt his cells boiling. Heat resistance EX was working overtime, but the sheer volume of energy was overwhelming. He needed space. He used shadow motion to slip into Kefla's shadow, emerging behind her. He swung a blade of water pressurized to cut steel. Kefla sensed it. Her instincts were insane. She ducked the water blade, slicing a few hairs from her head, and backhanded Rimuru. The blow connected with Rimuru's core. He gasped, or the slime equivalent of a gasp. His form destabilized. He flew backward, crashing into the same rock formation where Frieza was perched. Frieza looked down at the puddle of blue slime with amusement. He remarked that for a monster, Rimuru was quite squishy. Rimuru pulled himself together. His regeneration was slowing down. The environment of the void prevented him from pulling Magicules from the atmosphere. Because there was no atmosphere. He was running on his internal battery, and he was burning it fast. Raphael suggested a new strategy. Proposal: utilize the corruption. The toxic energy that had nearly killed Goku was still lingering in the environment. Rimuru could reabsorb it, but it would taint his mind. It would make him aggressive. It would lower his inhibitions. Rimuru looked at Kefla, who was charging up a massive attack that would wipe out the entire sector, including Goku and Gohan. He had no choice. Do it, Rimuru ordered his own soul. He opened the floodgates. He pulled the black sludge from the ground, the residue of his earlier rejection, back into his body. His blue color darkened to a deep indigo. His golden eyes turned red. The power spike was immediate. The pain was gone, replaced by a cold, burning rage. When Kefla fired her blast, Rimuru didn't block. He screamed. A Megiddo of corrupt energy erupted from his body. Thousands of water droplets tainted with dark magic shot out like bullets. They intercepted Kefla's blast, tearing through the energy wave. Kefla was forced to cross her arms to protect her face. The droplets hit her skin, burning like acid. She hissed in pain. The distraction was enough. Gohan saw the opening. He didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate about the morality of Rimuru's power. He trusted the result. Gohan flared his ultimate aura and charged. He slammed a fist into Kefla's stomach while she was blinded by the corrosive rain. The combination of Rimuru's dark magic and Gohan's pure kinetic force finally pushed the Saiyan fusion back. But the chain reaction had already started. The massive release of corrupt energy from Rimuru acted like a beacon. On the other side of the arena, Toppo, the leader of the Pride Troopers, stopped his fight with Android 17. Toppo's mustache twitched. He sensed it. A disturbance that violated the natural order of the universe. It wasn't just evil. It was wrongness. It was a power that did not belong in the multiverse. Toppo turned his head. He saw Rimuru glowing with that sickly indigo light. He saw the acid rain burning the stage. He saw the disregard for the purity of combat. Toppo made a decision. He abandoned 17. He jumped, crossing the arena in a single bound. He landed between Gohan and Kefla, facing Rimuru. His large hands clenched. He declared that justice demanded the erasure of this anomaly. Rimuru looked at Toppo. Raphael analyzed the threat level. Catastrophic. Toppo was equal to a god of destruction in potential. Rimuru was running on fumes and corruption. The clash was inevitable. Toppo fired a justice flash. A barrage of finger beams rained down. Rimuru dodged, weaving through the destruction, his body moving like liquid smoke. He couldn't tank these. They were infused with God Ki. If they hit, they would erase his soul, not just his body. He needed a shield. He grabbed a massive slab of Kachikachin with his sticky thread and hurled it at Toppo. The slab disintegrated instantly against the justice flash. Rimuru was pinned. He was being backed into a corner. Toppo advanced, his aura shifting from red to a menacing purple. He was preparing to get serious. Toppo cast aside his philosophy of restraint. He began to channel the power of destruction. And then the heartbeat happened. It wasn't a sound. It was a pressure wave. Everyone felt it. Jiren opened his eyes in his meditation. Frieza stopped smirking. Beerus stood up in the stands, gripping the railing so hard it bent. The heartbeat came from the pile of debris where Goku had been tossed. The corruption inside Goku. The toxic Magicules that Rimuru had inadvertently infected him with had not been dormant. While Rimuru was reabsorbing the external corruption, the internal corruption in Goku reacted to the call. It woke him up. But it didn't wake up Son Goku, the martial artist. It woke up the survival instinct of a Saiyan body under siege by an alien parasite. The debris exploded. Goku stood up. But he wasn't silver. He wasn't blue. He was surrounded by a jagged black and red aura that looked like Rimuru's corruption mixed with Super Saiyan rage. His eyes were blank white. His muscles were swollen, pulsing with veins that glowed violet. He was a berserker. He let out a roar that shattered the anti-magic area Rimuru had established. The sheer pressure of his ki cracked the foundation of the stage. Goku locked onto the strongest energy source nearby. That was Toppo. Goku vanished. He appeared in front of Toppo instantly. He didn't use technique. He headbutted the Pride Trooper. The sound was like a thunderclap. Toppo stumbled back, blood trickling from his nose. He looked at Goku in shock. This wasn't the noble warrior Jiren had fought. This was a beast. Goku didn't stop. He began to flail wildly, attacking anything that moved. He swung a back fist that caught Gohan. Gohan was launched into a pillar. "Dad!" Gohan screamed, but Goku didn't hear him. The corruption was driving the body. It was a what-if nightmare scenario. The protagonist had become the hazard. Rimuru watched in horror. This was his fault. His biology had mutated the timeline's hero. Raphael was running simulations rapidly. Solution: none. Subject Goku is currently consuming his own lifespan to convert Magicules into combat power. Time until self-destruction: 3 minutes. They didn't have 3 minutes. Goku turned his eyes on Rimuru. The source. The host. Goku wanted the rest of the power. He charged at Rimuru. Rimuru held up his hands. "Goku, stop!" It was useless. Goku punched. Rimuru used Beelzebub to try and absorb the impact, but the kinetic energy was too dense. Rimuru was splattered against the edge of the arena. He hung on by a thread, literally. He pulled himself up just in time to see Vegeta intercept Goku. The Prince of Saiyans had abandoned his post to stop his rival. Vegeta went super. Saiyan Blue evolved. His royal blue aura clashed with Goku's corrupted violet aura. They collided. The shockwave knocked Kefla off her feet. "Kakarot, snap out of it!" Vegeta yelled, punching Goku in the face. Goku didn't flinch. He bit Vegeta's arm. Vegeta screamed in shock and pain. This was feral. This was wrong. Goku slammed Vegeta into the ground and prepared a blast that was a twisted color of purple and black. It was a corrupted Kamehameha. If he fired it at this range, he would kill Vegeta and destroy the stage. Rimuru realized the chain reaction had reached its peak. The small choice to use his powers in had led to this inevitable disaster. He had to fix it, but fixing it required a sacrifice. He couldn't fight Goku. He had to cure him, and the only way to cure him was to extract the corruption. But extracting it while Goku was in this state was suicide. He would have to enter the storm. Rimuru made the choice. He didn't authorize Raphael. He just moved. He launched himself not at Goku, but onto him. He turned into his slime form and wrapped around Goku's head and chest. He blinded the berserker. He initiated gluttony in reverse. Instead of eating, he began to suction the poison out. Goku thrashed. He tore at the slime. He ripped chunks of Rimuru's body away. Rimuru felt pain that transcended his resistances. His core was being squeezed, but he held on. He pumped healing potion directly into Goku's pores while sucking the black Magicules out. It was a filtration process played out in the middle of a war zone. Toppo watched his hand raised to destroy them both. He saw the slime sacrificing its own existence to save the monster. Toppo hesitated. That hesitation was the only thing that saved Universe 7. Frieza intervened. He saw the opportunity. He fired a death beam not at Toppo, but at the ground beneath Goku and Rimuru. The floor collapsed. They fell. It looked like a double elimination. But as they fell, Rimuru fired a sticky thread back up, attaching it to the edge. They dangled there in the void, suspended over nothingness. The corruption in Goku, began to fade, the red aura receding. Goku went limp again. Rimuru was barely conscious, his mass reduced by half. They were alive, but they were hanging off the edge of the world, and the strongest of fighters in the multiverse were looking down at them, waiting to cut the thread. The team broken, the ace comatose, and the strategist nearly dead. The escalation had pushed them to the brink. Now the fallout would begin. The thread of sticky steel, spider silk, vibrated in the silent air of the void. It was a single line of white against the infinite black, holding the weight of two universes' hopes. Rimuru Tempest in his slime form was stretched to his molecular limit. The adhesive properties of his body were failing. The Kachi-Kachin edge above him was crumbling under the tension. Below him, Goku hung limp and heavy, his body a dead weight of dense muscle and dormant energy. Rimuru felt his grip slipping. He could not generate enough force to pull them up. His Magicules were depleted from the extraction of the corruption. He was just a glob of intelligent jelly dangling over oblivion. Above them, Toppo stood on the ledge. The Pride Trooper looked down, his face shadowed by the erratic flashes of lightning from distant battles. Toppo raised his hand. A sphere of orange destruction energy formed in his palm. It was small but dense. It was an execution. Toppo had made his choice. Justice required the removal of the anomaly. He did not monologue. He did not hesitate. He fired. The blast descended. Rimuru watched it come. Time slowed down. Raphael ran 1 billion simulations in a microsecond. Survival probability was 0. Rimuru could cut the thread and drop Goku to save himself by swinging to a lower rock. But his core command was to protect the timeline. He tightened his grip on Goku. He prepared to die. The blast was 3 feet away when a green translucent wall slammed into it. The explosion was contained. The shockwave rattled Rimuru's teeth, but the thread held. Android 17 stood on a floating rock 10 meters to the left, his hand extended. His barrier was flickering. He looked tired. His clothes were torn, and his infinite energy reactor was humming with a strained pitch. He had abandoned his fight with the Universe 3 robots to save them. It was a tactical error. It left 18's flank exposed on the other side of the arena, but 17 had made the calculation. The ace was worth more than the position. 17 did not smile. He swung his other arm, firing a grapple beam that wrapped around Goku's waist. With a heave of mechanical strength, he pulled both of them up. Rimuru and Goku flopped onto the hard surface of the arena. They were safe, but they were not okay. Rimuru dissolved into a puddle, unable to hold his shape. Goku lay face down, breathing in shallow hitches. Toppo glared at 17. The intervention annoyed him. He prepared to fire again, but Vegeta crashed into the scene. The Prince of Saiyans was bleeding from his left arm, where the berserk Goku had bitten him. He kicked Toppo in the side of the head, forcing the large trooper to stumble. The melee reset. This was the start of the long attrition. The adrenaline of the rescue faded instantly, replaced by the crushing reality of their condition. Universe 7 was in ruins. Piccolo was gone. 18 was gone. Gohan was fighting a losing battle against Kefla on the eastern ridge. Frieza was nowhere to be seen, likely hiding to preserve his stamina. And Goku was a liability. Rimuru pulled himself together, reforming into a small childlike version of his human form to conserve energy. He looked at 17 and Vegeta. They were panting, they were hurt, and the enemy was closing in. Kefla, bored with Gohan's defensive tactics, saw the gathering in the center. She laughed, a sound that cut through the noise of the explosions. She decided to end the game. She ignored Gohan and launched a massive chaotic barrage of red and green energy blasts towards the group. It was an extermination grid. Every square inch of the safe zone was targeted. Vegeta screamed for them to move. He grabbed Goku by the collar and dragged him. 17 deployed his barrier again, expanding it to cover them. But the barrier was weak from the earlier save. The first wave of blasts cracked it. The second wave shattered it. 17 was blown backward. Vegeta was forced to drop Goku to block a direct hit. Rimuru saw a blast heading straight for Goku's exposed head. He had to make a choice. A small choice. He had enough Magicules for one gluttony absorption or one teleport. If he teleported Goku, he would leave Vegeta open. If he absorbed the blast, he would be incapacitated for minutes digesting the energy. He chose to absorb. He threw his body over Goku, acting as a living shield. The blast hit Rimuru. He swallowed it. The energy was wild and spicy, burning his insides. He fell into a temporary stasis, his system overwhelmed by the need to break down the foreign ki. He was alive, but he was a statue. This left Goku defenseless for the second wave, and this was where the massive outcome triggered. Gohan saw it. From the ridge he saw his father lying in the dust, Rimuru paralyzed on top of him, and the next volley of death approaching. Gohan stopped fighting Kefla. He didn't look for a counterattack. He didn't try to win his duel. He made the calculation that Rimuru had made earlier, but with a human cost. Gohan flared his ultimate aura. He moved faster than he had ever moved in his life. He intercepted the blast not with a barrier but with his body. He stood over Goku and Rimuru and took the punishment. The explosions tore his guy. They burned his skin. They broke his arm. But he didn't move. He planted his feet and screamed, creating a wall of ki that diverted the fire. Kefla landed in front of him. She looked impressed and annoyed. She asked why he would throw away his fight for a sleeping man. Gohan didn't answer. He couldn't. His lungs were collapsed. He looked at Kefla with one eye swollen shut. He realized he could not beat her. She was a fusion of two prodigies with infinite potential. He was a scholar who fought out of necessity, but he was also a tactician. He saw the edge of the arena behind her. He saw that she was arrogant. She was floating, slightly hovering in her confidence. Gohan made the choice. He stopped defending. He grabbed Kefla's ankle. Kefla blinked. Huh. Gohan smiled a bloody smile. He didn't fire a blast. He didn't punch. He expanded his Kai outward not to damage her, but to push. He turned himself into a rocket. He launched himself backward towards the edge, dragging Kefla with him. She tried to fly up, but Gohan had locked his Kai with hers, disrupting her flight control. It was a suicide throw. "Dad," Gohan whispered. "Wake up." They went over the edge together. Kefla screamed in rage, firing a beam that grazed Gohan's cheek, but it was too late. Gravity claimed them. They fell into the void. The Grand Minister announced the double elimination. Son Gohan of Universe 7 and Kefla of Universe 6 were out. The silence that followed was heavier than the noise. Universe 7 had lost its leader. Gohan was the strategist, the voice of reason, the one who kept them organized. Without him, they were just brawlers. Vegeta stared at the spot where his son's rival had fallen. He didn't mourn. He got angry, but it was a cold anger. He looked at the unconscious Goku and the paralyzed Rimuru. "Useless," he hissed. "All of you." But the loss of Kefla triggered something far worse. On the other side of the stage, Toppo watched the elimination. He watched as Dispo was being cornered by Frieza, who had finally emerged to pick off the stragglers. Toppo saw the chaotic state of the arena. He saw that justice had failed to maintain order. Good and evil were meaningless terms in a battle for survival. He closed his eyes. He made a choice that altered the physics of the tournament. He decided to stop being a candidate and start being a god. Toppo dropped his hands. His large frame seemed to shrink and then expand. A dark purple aura erupted from his skin. It wasn't the jagged aura of a fighter. It was the smooth, flowing, liquid aura of destruction. The symbol of the Hakaishin appeared on his chest. His eyes turned purple. The atmosphere of the world of void grew heavy. The gravity increased. Debris on the ground didn't just break, it vanished. It was erased from existence. Toppo had accessed his god of destruction mode. Frieza, who was torturing Dispo, felt the shift. He turned around and laughed. He mocked Toppo for finally showing his true colors. Frieza, the Emperor of Evil, thought he understood power. He fired a death ball at Toppo. Toppo didn't block. He flicked a tiny sphere of destruction energy at the death ball. The two collided. The death ball didn't explode. It ceased to exist. Frieza's eyes widened. The tiny sphere continued its path. It hit Frieza in the shoulder. There was no blood. Frieza's shoulder simply disappeared. The armor, the skin, the bone just gone, leaving a smooth, cauterized hollow. Frieza screamed. It was a scream of genuine terror. Toppo walked forward. "Justice is over," he said, his voice deeper, vibrating in everyone's skull. "Only survival remains." He grabbed Frieza by the face. He squeezed. Frieza flailed firing beams that fizzled out against Toppo's aura. Toppo threw Frieza. The Emperor skipped across the arena, smashing through 3 mountain-sized rocks before coming to a stop in a crater. His golden form shattered back to white. He was alive, but he was broken. Now Toppo turned to the main group, to Vegeta, to 17, to the pile of Goku and Rimuru. Rimuru woke up from his stasis. The digestion was incomplete, but the threat forced him awake. He saw the purple giant walking towards them. Raphael screamed, "Alert! Energy signature equivalent to Veldora. Threat level, exterminator. Defensive capabilities, insufficient." Rimuru tried to stand. His legs were jelly. He looked at Vegeta. The prince was standing between Toppo and the falling Goku. Vegeta was trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer limit of his stamina. He had no energy left to go blue evolved. He was barely Super Saiyan. "Vegeta, move," Rimuru shouted. "Shut up, slime," Vegeta growled. "I am the prince of all Saiyans. I do not run from a destroyer." Toppo raised his hand. He charged a Hakai sphere the size of a beach ball. This wasn't a blast to wring them out. This was a blast to erase them. If it hit, it would kill them. The Grand Minister would not disqualify Toppo, because Toppo was a god now, and gods made the rules. Rimuru looked at the sphere. He looked at Vegeta's back. He realized the truth. They could not win this fight as individuals. They were too broken. The power system of this world was based on multipliers. Ki multiplied by transformation. Rimuru's system was based on addition. Skills added to Magicules. They needed to combine the systems. Rimuru made the second small choice of the act, a choice that violated his own identity. He decided to stop being a person. "Vegeta," Rimuru yelled. "Don't block it. Wear me." Vegeta glanced back, confused. "What?" Rimuru didn't explain. He liquefied his entire body. He launched himself at Vegeta. He didn't attack. He splashed onto Vegeta's back. He spread out, covering Vegeta's armor, wrapping around his limbs, coating his chest, sliding over his head to form a helmet. He became a living suit of armor. "Don't fight it," Rimuru's voice echoed directly in Vegeta's mind. "I am syncing my Magicules with your Kai. I will handle the defense and the healing. You handle the offense. Use my energy as fuel." Vegeta felt the invasion. It was cold and slimy and humiliating. But then he felt the power. It wasn't the hot burn of ki. It was a cool, deep ocean of stamina. Rimuru was pumping his own life force into Vegeta's cells, forcing the mitochondria to overproduce energy. Vegeta's aura flared. It wasn't blue anymore. It was a swirling mix of royal blue and Rimuru's iridescent teal. The storm star form. Toppo fired the Hakai. Vegeta didn't dodge. He punched the ball of destruction. His fist, covered in Rimuru's hardened diamond steel magical slime, collided with the erasure energy. The pain was immediate. Rimuru screamed in Vegeta's head as his substance was being erased layer by layer. Warning: mass loss at 12%. Regeneration failing. Pain nullification maximized. Hold it together, Vegeta roared. He pushed. The combination of Saiyan pride and Demon Lord resilience created a miracle. The Kai ball cracked. Vegeta punched through it, shattering the energy into harmless sparks. He didn't stop. He charged Toppo. Toppo looked surprised. He tried to grab Vegeta, but Vegeta was faster now, assisted by Rimuru's thought acceleration. Vegeta ducked under Toppo's guard and slammed a fist into Toppo's gut. The impact created a shockwave that cleared the dust from the entire arena. Toppo slid back. "You are annoying," Toppo bellowed. He unleashed a storm of destruction spheres. Justice Flash, God Mode. Vegeta danced through the rain of destruction. Every time a sphere hit him, Rimuru absorbed the damage, sacrificing his own mass to protect the host. Vegeta's armor chipped away and instantly regrew. It was a symbiotic tank. Vegeta got close. He gathered all the energy Rimuru was feeding him. Final flash. But Rimuru added his own spell to the mix. Black Flame. The beam that shot from Vegeta's hands was a spiral of golden ki and black fire. It hit Toppo point blank. The god of destruction was engulfed. The explosion was visible from the stands of every universe. Toppo was pushed back. He dug his heels in. The ground erased beneath him. He was sliding towards the edge. "Go, go, go," Rimuru screamed in Vegeta's mind. Vegeta poured everything into the blast. His life, Rimuru's life. Toppo roared his uniform, tearing away his purple aura, flaring to the max. He stopped the slide. He was inches from the edge. He held the beam with one hand. He crushed it. The beam shattered. Vegeta fell to his knees exhausted. Rimuru sloughed off him, pooling on the ground a grey, lifeless sludge. They had hit him with their best shot, and Toppo was still standing. He was burned. He was panting, but he was not out. Toppo walked back towards them. "Impressive," he admitted, but futile. He raised his fist to finish Vegeta. And then the third variable entered the equation. Android 17. While Vegeta and Rimuru had distracted the God 17, had been hiding. He wasn't recovering. He was charging. He had gathered every scrap of energy from his reactor into a single point. He appeared behind Toppo. He didn't attack Toppo. He attacked the ground under Toppo's feet. 17 fired a point-blank blast. The edge of the arena, which had been weakened by the final flash, crumbled. Toppo lost his footing. He fell. But Toppo was a god. He reached out and grabbed the ledge. He hung there dangling. He looked up at 17. 17 looked down. Slippery hands. 17 deadpanned. Toppo growled. He began to pull himself up. He was too strong. Gravity meant nothing to him. 17 looked at Vegeta and the puddle of Rimuru. He looked at the unconscious Goku. He realized that if the Toppo got back up, they were dead. There was no second final flash. There was no more magic. 17 made the final choice. A choice driven by the logic of a machine and the heart of a human. He jumped. He landed on Toppo's head. The impact knocked Toppo's hand off the ledge. They both fell. "Wait," Toppo shouted. 17 detonated his energy barrier around them. A suicide container. It propelled them both downward faster. 17. Goku's voice cracked. He had woken up, just in time to see the sacrifice. Android 17 smiled, a small human smile. He vanished into the void with the god of destruction. The Grand Minister spoke. Topo of Universe 11 and Android 17 of Universe 7 are eliminated. The arena was silent again. The dust settled. Universe 7 was down to 3 active members. A battered Vegeta, a liquefied Rimuru, and a newly awake Goku, who was staring at the darkness where 17 had fallen. But they weren't alone. Jiren stood on the central pillar. He had watched it all. He had watched his partner fall. He had watched the sacrifices. He looked bored. And from the rubble behind Jiren, a purple light flickered. Frieza crawled out. He was missing a tail. He was missing half his face. But he was laughing. A low, maniacal chuckle. "How wonderful," Frieza rasped. "The monsters are killing each other." The strategic mind Gohan was gone. The defensive anchor 17 was gone. The support Rimuru was reduced to a puddle. And the heavy hitter Topo was gone, leaving only the absolute wall. Jiren hopped down from his pillar. He landed softly. He didn't power up. He just walked towards the 3 survivors. There were 4 minutes left in the tournament. 4 minutes that would feel like an eternity. Rimuru's consciousness was fading. Raphael spoke one last notification. "Notice. Magicule levels critical. Hibernation mode imminent. Remaining combat capability 0.1%. Suggestion. Eat the god's leftover energy." Rimuru, the grey sludge, saw a spark of purple energy where Topo had stood. A residue of destruction. It was poison. It was death. Rimuru began to crawl towards it. If he ate it, he would either die or evolve. There were no other options. Small choice, massive outcome. The slime took a bite of the destruction. The taste of destruction was not like fire or ice. It was like silence. It was the flavor of a math equation resolving to 0. Rimuru Tempest had consumed many things in his life, from hip-hop grass to high-level spirits to the sins of an entire army. But the residue of Topo's Hakai energy was different. It did not want to be eaten. It wanted to erase the stomach that held it. Inside Rimuru's core, the great sage Raphael was screaming in a language of pure error codes. The prediction engine was failing because the variable Rimuru had introduced was anti-existence. The grey sludge that was Rimuru's body began to bubble. It turned black, not the black of his previous corruption, but a void black that absorbed the ambient light of the arena. He did not reform into a human shape. He could not. The concept of a human shape required a stability he no longer possessed. He rose as a shifting, jagged mass of dark fluid, a silhouette of a demon lord drawn in charcoal and static. He felt powerful, but it was a sick power. It was the power of a cancer cell. It consumed the host to kill the enemy. Jiren stood 10 meters away. He looked at the black thing that used to be a slime. For the first time, the absolute warrior's eyes narrowed with something close to caution. He did not fear the power level. His power was still vastly superior to everyone in the arena combined. He feared the nature of the energy. It was uncontrolled destruction. Jiren stepped forward. The sound of his boot hitting the Kachikachin was the only sound in the universe. He ignored Vegeta, who was lying face down in the dirt, his armor gone, his pride, the only thing keeping him breathing. He ignored Frieza, who was crawling out of the crater missing half a tail and clutching his erased shoulder. Jiren looked at Goku. Goku was standing, but he was swaying. The silver eyes were gone. The blue hair was gone. He was in his base form, his guy torn to shreds, his body covered in bruises that were turning purple and black. But he was smiling, a tired, broken smile. Jiren spoke. He said it was over. He said trust had spawned only weakness and sacrifice had led only to delay. He raised his hand. A simple energy blast aimed at Goku's chest. It was fast. Too fast for the base form Saiyan to dodge. But the blast did not hit Goku. A tentacle of black static shot out from Rimuru. It intercepted the blast. There was no explosion. The blast simply vanished, eaten by the void. Rimuru's mass shrank slightly. The cost of eating the attack was his own substance. He was burning his soul to fuel the defense. Raphael spoke in Rimuru's mind. Notice, soul corridor to Veldora is unstable. Magical reserves are at 0%, consuming lifespan to maintain form. Time until total existence failure, 120 seconds. 2 minutes, that was the timeline. Rimuru did not have a mouth, but he projected a thought that everyone heard. Fight. Goku heard it. The command bypassed his exhaustion. He forced his body to move. He flared. His golden Frieza helped him unknowingly by firing a death beam at Jiren's eyes from the ground. Jiren tilted his head, dodging the beam effortlessly. But the distraction allowed Goku to close the gap. Goku threw a punch. Jiren caught it. Jiren twisted Goku's arm. The sound of bones straining was audible. Jiren prepared to throw Goku off the edge. Rimuru moved. He did not run. He glitched. He appeared behind Jiren, using a chaotic version of Shadow Step that tore through the spatial coordinates. He formed a blade of black void and swung it at Jiren's neck. Jiren sensed the erasure. He was forced to release Goku and duck. The blade passed over his head. Where it sliced the air itself turned grey and cracked. Jiren backhanded Rimuru. The impact shattered Rimuru's form, splashing black sludge across the arena. But the sludge was acidic now. It burned the floor. It burned Jiren's uniform. Jiren hissed. He looked at the burn on his glove. This slime was a hazard. Frieza laughed. He stood up shaky but malicious. He saw the potential. He saw that Jiren could be hurt not by force but by rot. Frieza transformed back into Golden Frieza for one last second, burning the absolute dregs of his stamina. He charged. It was a three-pronged assault of the broken. Goku on the right, Frieza on the left, Rimuru from below and everywhere. Jiren roared. His red aura exploded, pushing them all back. He was a volcano. He punched Frieza in the gut, folding the tyrant in half. He kicked Goku in the chin, launching him into the air. He stomped on the ground and a shockwave vaporized the puddles of Rimuru's body. But he couldn't kill them. They kept getting up. It was illogical. They should be dead. Their stamina was 0. Their ki was empty. What was moving their bodies? It was the thread. Rimuru had re-established the sticky thread network. But he wasn't using it to bind enemies. He was using it to puppet his allies. He had attached threads to Goku's limbs and Frieza's tail. He was physically yanking them back into the fight, forcing their muscles to contract when they wanted to give up. He was the puppeteer of the desperate. Goku felt the tug on his arm. He went with it. He turned the pull into a spin. He landed a kick on Jiren's shoulder. It didn't do damage, but it moved him. 1 inch. Frieza fired a barrage of homing discs. Jiren swatted them away, but one disc nicked his ear. A drop of blood fell. The invincibility was chipping away. Jiren had enough. He decided to end the source of the annoyance. He targeted the main mass of Rimuru. He gathered a massive amount of energy into his fist. A power impact designed to incinerate every molecule. He punched the black sludge. Rimuru didn't dodge. He expanded. Gluttony. Void mode. He wrapped around Jiren's fist. He tried to eat the energy. The pain was absolute. It felt like swallowing a supernova. Rimuru's consciousness began to fragment. Memories of Tempest started to fade. He forgot the layout of his city. He forgot the taste of tea. He forgot the names of the goblin riders. He was sacrificing his data to process the heat. Raphael screamed. Alert. Memory corruption at 40%. Skill tree deteriorating. Sacrifice black lightning. Yes, no. Sacrifice steel thread. Yes, no. Yes, Rimuru thought. Take it all. Just hold him. Rimuru held on for 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, Jiren was immobilized, his arm trapped in the eating slime. Now, Rimuru screamed telepathically. Goku and Frieza saw the opening. They didn't need to be told. They knew this was the last window. Goku summoned the last of his strength. He didn't transform. He couldn't. He forced his base Kai into a single point in his palms. Frieza did the same, charging a death ball. They launched a combined beam. It wasn't the strongest attack of the tournament. It was barely stronger than a standard Kamehameha. But Jiren couldn't block it. His arm was trapped. The beam hit Jiren in the chest. He was pushed back. His boots slid across the ground. Rimuru was dragged with him, his body stretching and tearing. Jiren gritted his teeth. He glared at the beam. He began to push it back with just his chest and his free hand. He was too strong. Even trapped, even facing 2 opponents, he was winning the tug of war. The beam began to recede towards Goku and Frieza. Vegeta woke up. He heard the noise. He opened one eye. He saw the struggle. He saw Kakarot failing. He saw the monster Jiren refusing to fall. Vegeta couldn't stand. His legs were broken. He couldn't fire a blast. He had no Kai, but he had hate, and he had a rock. Vegeta grabbed a piece of Kachi-Kachin debris. He crawled. He crawled to the edge of the pit where Jiren was sliding. Jiren didn't look at the crawler. He was focused on the beam. Vegeta reached the edge. He looked at Jiren's footing. The rock Jiren was standing on was cracked. Vegeta lifted his rock. He smashed it down on the crack. It was a pathetic physical attack. A child could have hit harder, but it was precise. The ground beneath Jiren's left heel crumbled. Jiren slipped. His balance wavered for a microsecond. That microsecond was enough. Rimuru felt the shift. Sacrifice spatial motion. Sacrifice regeneration. Sacrifice Demon Lord Haki. Rimuru detonated his own mass. He didn't explode outwards. He imploded. He created a vacuum at Jiren's feet, a hole in the physics of the stage. Jiren fell into the hole. He lost his footing completely. The combined beam of Goku and Frieza slammed into him with full force. Jiren was launched backward. He went over the edge. But Jiren was not done. As he fell, he reached out. His hand grabbed the edge of the arena. He hung there glaring up at them. His eyes were burning with humiliation. He began to pull himself up. He was going to climb back up and kill them all. Frieza looked at Goku. "I'm sick of this," Frieza spat. Goku nodded. "Me too." They didn't charge a beam. They ran. They ran at the ledge. They jumped. Goku and Frieza tackled Jiren's hand. They used their bodies as battering rams. The impact knocked Jiren's grip loose. The 3 of them fell into the void together. A tangle of purple, gold, and grey. "Goku!" Vegeta screamed from the ground. Rimuru watched them fall. He was just a puddle now. A small black puddle on the edge of a broken world. He couldn't move. He couldn't see. He could only listen. The Grand Minister's voice rang out, clear and unbothered. "Jiren of Universe 11 is eliminated. Son Goku of Universe 7 is eliminated. Frieza of Universe 7 is eliminated." Silence. The time limit has expired. The central pillar descended. The Xenos floated down. The Grand Minister looked at the stage. Universe 11 has 0 fighters remaining. Universe 7 has 2 fighters remaining. 2. Vegeta, lying broken in the rubble, and Rimuru Tempest, the black stain on the floor. Universe 7 wins. The cheers from the stands were distant, muffled, Vegeta rolled onto his back. He laughed, a painful, wheezing laugh. They had done it. They had survived. But Rimuru did not celebrate. Raphael was giving the final report. Notice: core stability critical. Corruption from destruction energy is permanent. Soul damage is extensive. Reboot required. Warning: reboot will reset current persona memory cache. You will not remember this tournament. Rimuru felt the darkness closing in. It wasn't the void of the arena. It was the void of sleep. He tried to hold on to the memory, the fight, the friends, the sacrifice. But the Hakai energy he had eaten demanded a price. It took the recent data. The Super Dragon Balls glowed in the distance, filling the sky with golden light. The Dragon's Super Shenron appeared dwarfing galaxies. He spoke in the divine language, asking for the wish. Android 17 appeared on the stage, teleported back from the bench, where he had materialized after his fall. He looked at Vegeta. He looked at the puddle of Rimuru. He looked at the empty spot where Goku had been. The wish, the Grand Minister prompted. 17 looked at the others. He knew what the wish had to be. It was the only wish that made sense. Restore all the erased universes, 17 said. The wish was granted. The light washed over the multiverse. The erased worlds popped back into existence. Universe 6, Universe 11, Universe 2, all of them. Jiren was back on his bench, looking at his hands in confusion. Toppo was hugging Dispo. But on the stage of the Tournament of Power, the cost of the victory remained. The golden light healed Vegeta. It healed Goku, who appeared back on the stage. It healed Frieza. It touched Rimuru. The black corruption hissed. The dragon's magic fought the destruction energy. It was a war of miracles. Slowly, the black faded, turning back to blue. The jagged shape smoothed out. Rimuru returned to his human form. He lay on the ground, sleeping. Goku rushed over. Rimuru, you did it. We won. Goku shook him. Rimuru didn't wake up. Hey, Goku said, his voice dropping. Rimuru? Rimuru's eyes opened. They were golden again, clear, innocent. He looked at Goku. He looked at Vegeta. He looked at the giant dragon in the sky. He blinked. Who are you people? Rimuru asked. The silence that followed was heavier than the fighting. Raphael had saved his life by deleting the context. Rimuru remembered his name. He remembered being a slime. He remembered Japan. He remembered Tempest. But he did not remember Universe 7. He did not remember the training. He did not remember the bond. To him, he had just arrived in a strange garden with a giant cat and a man with spiky hair. Goku stepped back hurt. It's me, Goku. We'd just saved the universe. Rimuru sat up, checking his hands. Universe, I was just in a cave. Did I teleport? Vegeta stood up. He walked over. He looked at the slime. He saw the blankness in the eyes. The prince understood the cost of power better than anyone. He understood what Rimuru had done. He had eaten death to save them, and the death had eaten his memories of them. Leave him, Kakarot, Vegeta said quietly. He doesn't know us. But, Goku started. He fought, Vegeta said, looking at the healed scars on his own armor where Rimuru had been a suit. That is enough. The Grand Minister clapped his hands. The tournament is concluded. All universes are restored. It is time to return to your respective timelines. Whis tapped his staff. A cube of light formed around Team Universe 7. They began to float up. Rimuru looked around in panic. Wait, where am I going? What is happening? Beerus looked at the slime. The god of destruction felt a strange emotion. Respect. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small candy wrapper. He flicked it at Rimuru. It bounced off Rimuru's head. You are going home, slime, Beerus said. You did a good job, even if you don't know it. The light intensified. The world of void vanished. They were back in the garden at Capsule Corporation. The sun was shining. The birds were singing. Bulla was crying in her crib. It was as if nothing had happened. Rimuru stood on the grass. He looked at the Z fighters. They looked at him with a mix of sadness and gratitude. "Well," Rimuru said, scratching his head, "this is awkward. Can someone tell me the way to the Jura forest?" Goku smiled. It was a sad smile, but a genuine one. "I can't take you there, Rimuru, but I can say thank you." We stepped forward. "I will handle the transfer. His timeline is correcting itself. The anomaly is resolving." Rimuru began to fade, his body turning into particles of light. The multiverse was rejecting his presence now that the crisis was over. He was a character from a different story returning to his own book. "Goodbye," Goku waved. "Bye?" Rimuru waved back, confused. "You guys are weird." And then he was gone. The garden was empty of the slime. The 10th warrior was gone. The timeline sealed shut. Vegeta sat down on the bench. He closed his eyes. He felt a phantom sensation on his skin, the cool protective layer of a Demon Lord's armor. Vegeta grunted. "Not bad for a blob." Goku looked at his hand. He clenched it into a fist. He felt the lingering trace of Rimuru's Magicules mixed with his ki. A faint residue of a power that wasn't from this world. "He was strong," Goku said. "I hope he's okay." In a cave in the Jura forest, a small blue slime woke up with a start. He looked around. Veldora was gone. The cave was quiet. "That was a weird nap," Rimuru muttered to himself. "I felt like I was falling for a long time." "Answer," the great sage whispered in his mind. "It was just a dream, a very long, violent dream." "Is that so?" Rimuru thought. "I feel hungry, like I haven't eaten in 48 minutes. He hopped away towards the exit of the cave, towards the light, towards his own destiny, unaware that in a distant timeline he was a legend who had saved existence itself. The what-if was closed. The story remained only in the scars of the fighters who remembered, and that was enough. The staff of the Angel Whis floated in the void of the neutral zone, recording the divergence. The file was labeled Anomaly 780B. It was a closed loop. The fighters of Universe 7 had returned to their daily lives, but the scars of the Tournament of Power were not just physical. On a small island in the Southern Sea, Goku and Vegeta were sparring. The impact of their fists created shockwaves that flattened the waves, but their fighting style had evolved. Vegeta did not just block. He moved his Kai like a fluid, wrapping it around his limbs to absorb impact before returning it. It was a technique born from the memory of a living suit of armor. He didn't name it, but he used it. Goku was different too. He was more cautious. He no longer treated foreign energy as a simple challenge. He treated it as a potential poison. He had felt the corruption of a different reality in his veins, and it had made him sharper. They sat on the beach afterwards. They didn't speak of the blue slime. To speak of him was to admit that they had needed a monster to save them. But the respect was there, silent and enduring. Far away across the barrier of realities in the great Jura forest, Rimuru Tempest sat on his throne. He was listening to a report from Rigurd about the road construction. He felt fine. He felt normal. But there was a ghost in his skill tree. Raphael had categorized it as Unknown Skill 001. It was a passive resistance to erasure. Rimuru didn't know where he got it. He assumed it was from eating a weird rock in the cave. Later that night, he walked out to the balcony of his city. He looked up at the stars. He didn't know that one of those stars in a different dimension was a world he had saved. He felt a strange phantom pain in his core, a hunger for an energy that tasted like nothingness. He rubbed his chest. He wondered if he had forgotten something important. Raphael remained silent. The great sage knew that some memories were too dangerous to keep. The data was deleted, but the hardware upgrade remained. Rimuru turned back to his city, his cape fluttering in the wind. He was the king of monsters, and somewhere in the multiverse, he was also the savior of Universe 7. The timeline had healed over the wound, leaving only a faint scar that throbbed whenever the balance of the worlds was threatened. The record ended there. We closed the projection. He smiled a small, enigmatic smile. The story was over, but the multiverse was larger than ever.